If you've ever laid in bed at night, replaying the day in your head, thinking about the moments you raised your voice, the times you felt impatient, the things you wish you handled differently, and quietly told yourself, I'm a bad mother, this is for you, because what you're feeling right now isn't talked about enough. That heavy, quiet guilt, the kind that sits in your chest long after the house is finally still, the kind that makes you question yourself, even when you spent the entire day giving everything you had. And what if the truth is not what you've been telling yourself? What if you're not failing? What if you're just overwhelmed? You wake up already tired. Even if you slept, your mind starts running before your feet even touch the floor. There's always something to think about, something to plan, something to fix, something to remember. You move through your day, taking care of everyone else, making sure things don't fall apart, holding everything together in ways no one really notices. And somewhere in between all of that, you lose patience. Maybe it's over something small. Maybe it's just noise, or another request when you're already stretched thin. And then comes that feeling. The instant regret. The silence after. The thought that hits you harder than anything else. Why am I? The truth is, more mothers feel this way than you think. They just don't say it out loud. They carry it quietly. Who's like you? Because admitting it feels uncomfortable. It feels like something you're not supposed to say. But feeling overwhelmed doesn't mean you don't love your children. Feeling exhausted doesn't mean you're not doing enough. It means you've been carrying too much for too long, without enough space to breathe. And this isn't about telling you what to do or how to fix it. This is just a space where you can finally hear something different. Something softer. Something that doesn't judge you. So if you've been holding that weight inside you, if you've been questioning yourself more than usual, stay here for a moment. You don't need to prove anything right now. You don't need to be better in this moment. You just need to be understood. There is a kind of tiredness that sleep doesn't fix. It's the kind that follows you from the moment you wake up to the moment you close your eyes at night. Not because you've been physically active all day, but because your mind never really gets a break. Even in quiet moments, it's still working, still planning, still remembering, still holding everything together. You're thinking about what needs to be done next, what you might have forgotten, what your child needs, what the house needs, what tomorrow will look like. It doesn't stop. It just shifts from one thought to another, like a constant background noise that never fully fades. And the hard part is, most of this work is invisible. No one sees the effort it takes to keep everything running smoothly. No one notices the mental checklist you carry every single day. You remember appointments, school schedules, meals, emotions, small details that seem insignificant but somehow matter. You think ahead, you prepare, you adjust, and you do it so automatically that even you start to forget how much you're actually carrying. It becomes normal. Expected. Quietly assumed. But your mind is not designed to hold this much all the time. When it does, it slowly starts to wear down. Not in a dramatic way, but in a quiet, steady way. You feel it in your patience, in your energy, in your ability to respond calmly. Things that once felt manageable start to feel heavier. Not because you've changed, but because the weight has increased, and when no one acknowledges this load, it becomes even harder, because it makes you question yourself. It makes you wonder why you feel so tired when nothing big has happened. But something has. You've been carrying an invisible responsibility that never turns off. This isn't a weakness. This isn't you failing to cope. This is what happens when one person holds too much for too long without relief. Your exhaustion makes sense. Your mental fatigue makes sense. You are not imagining it. You are carrying more than people realize, and it's okay that it feels heavy. There are moments that stay with you longer than they should. Moments that replay in your mind when everything is quiet. You think about the way you responded, the tone in your voice, the look on your child's face. And no matter how small the situation was, it feels bigger later, heavier. Maybe it was just a normal day. You were already tired, already stretched thin, and then something small happened. A repeated question, a mess, a loud moment when you needed silence. And before you could stop it, your patience slipped. Your voice got sharper than you intended. Your reaction came faster than your control. And then, almost immediately, comes the regret. that sinking feeling in your chest, the quiet thought that follows. I shouldn't have done that. You try to move on, but your mind doesn't let it go. That is Ali. It holds on to it, replays it, examines it from every angle. This is where the guilt loop begins. You don't just feel bad about the moment. You start questioning yourself. Why am I reacting like this? What's wrong with me? A good mother wouldn't do this. And suddenly, one small moment turns into a much bigger story about who you are. But what's actually happening here is not a reflection of your love or your intentions. It's a reflection of your capacity. When your emotional energy is low, your ability to respond calmly becomes limited. Not because you don't care, but because you're already running on empty. Overwhelm doesn't announce itself loudly. It builds quietly, and when it reaches a certain point, it starts to show in small cracks. In your tone, in your patience, in your reactions. These moments are not proof that you're failing. They are signals that you're depleted, and the fact that you feel guilt afterward, that matters. It shows awareness, it shows care. It shows that you want to do better. Not because you're forced to, but because it matters to you. You are not stuck in this loop because you are a bad mother. You are in this loop because you care deeply. While carrying more than you should alone, there are days when even the smallest things feel like too much. A simple request can feel overwhelming. A little noise can feel unbearable. Something that normally wouldn't bother you suddenly feels like it's pushing you to your limit. And in those moments, it's confusing because part of you knows it's not a big deal. You can see that. You understand that. But your reaction doesn't match that understanding. Your body feels tense. Your patience disappears faster than expected. And afterward, you're left wondering why something so small felt so big. This is not about the situation itself. It's about what your system is already holding. When your mind and body are under constant pressure, they don't have the same capacity to handle additional stress. Even minor things start to feel like too much. Not because they've changed, but because you're already full. Think of it like this. When you're calm and rested, you have space. Space to pause, to think, to respond. But when you're overwhelmed, that space disappears. There's no buffer left, so everything feels immediate. Everything feels intense. Your nervous system is trying to keep up with everything you've been carrying. The constant thinking, the responsibilities, the emotional weight. And when it doesn't get enough rest, it stays in a heightened state. Always alert. Always reacting. That's why the noise feels louder. That's why interruptions feel harder. That's why simple tasks feel heavier than they should. This doesn't mean you've become less patient as a person. It means your system is overloaded. And when a system is overloaded, it doesn't respond the same way it would when it's balanced. It reacts faster. It feels more. It struggles to regulate. You're not overreacting. You're responding from a place that hasn't had enough rest. And that changes everything. Somewhere along the way, without even noticing when it happened, your identity started to shift. Not in a loud or obvious way, but quietly. Gradually, you became what everyone needed you to be. A caregiver. A problem solver. A constant support system. And while that role is meaningful, it also takes space. A lot of Italiano. There was a time when you had moments that were just yours. Thoughts that weren't interrupted. Time that wasn't scheduled around someone else's needs. A sense of self that existed outside of responsibilities. Now, it feels different. Most of your time is spoken for. Most of your energy goes outward. And when you finally get a quiet moment, instead of feeling like yourself again, you just feel tired. Empty. Unsure of what you even want to do at that time. It's not that you don't love being a mother. It's that, somewhere in the process, parts of you got pushed aside. Your interests, your stillness, your space to just be. And when that happens, it creates a kind of exhaustion that goes deeper than physical tiredness. Because you're not just doing a lot. You're doing it without feeling fully connected to yourself anymore. You might not even have the words for it. Just a quiet feeling that something is missing. That you're present in your life, but not fully there in the way you used to be. This doesn't mean you've lost yourself permanently. It means you've been focused on holding everything together. And in that process, you haven't had the space to reconnect with who you are outside of that role. And that matters, because you are not just a mother. You are a person who needs space, identity, and moments that belong only to you. There's a quiet pressure that builds without you realizing it. It doesn't come from one place. It comes from what you see, what you hear, and what you start to believe over time. You see other mothers who seem calm, organized, patient. Their homes look put together. Their routines seem smooth. Their responses seem measured. And even if you know you're only seeing a small part of their lives, it still affects you. Because in your own day-to-day reality, things don't always look like that. Your day feels messy, unpredictable, emotionally heavy. You're trying to keep up, but it doesn't feel as controlled or as calm as what you see from the outside. And slowly, without saying it out loud, a comparison starts to form. Why does it seem easier for them? Why can't I handle things like that? What am I doing wrong? This is where the silent pressure grows. It's not always obvious, but it's there. The expectation to be more patient, more organized, more present, to handle everything without feeling overwhelmed, to make it all look effortless, even when it's not. And when your reality doesn't match that expectation, it creates tension inside you. But what you're comparing your full experience to is often just a moment from someone else's life, a small, curated piece that doesn't show the full picture. Every home has its own challenges. Every parent has moments they struggle with, but those moments are rarely shared in the same way. So you're left comparing your hardest moments to someone else's calmest ones. And that's not a fair comparison. The pressure you feel is not because you're doing something wrong. It's because you're holding yourself to a standard that isn't based on the full reality of anyone's life. You are not behind. You are not less capable. You are experiencing the full weight of your own reality. And that is something no one else can fully see from the outside. As you sit with everything you've just heard, maybe a part of you feels a little quieter, not because everything is suddenly fixed, but because something inside you has been named, that heaviness you carry every day. It finally has words, and sometimes that alone can make it feel just a little lighter. You've been holding so much for so long, not just the physical responsibilities, but the mental and emotional weight that comes with them. The constant thinking, the adjusting, the caring, the showing up even when you're already tired. And through all of that, you've still been questioning yourself, wondering if you're doing enough, if you're doing it right. But the truth is, the way you worry about this, the way it stays on your mind, the way you replay moments and wish you could do better, that doesn't come from failure. That comes from care, from love, from wanting to be present, even when you're rerunning low. You are not a bad mother. You are a human being who has been carrying more than most people can see. You are someone who keeps going, even on the days when your energy is almost gone. You are someone who feels deeply, even when it is uncomfortably, and that matters more than you give yourself credit for. It's okay that you feel overwhelmed. It makes sense that you feel tired. It makes sense that some days feel harder than others. None of that takes away from who you are or what you're doing. Right now, you don't need to become better. You don't need to fix everything. You don't need to prove anything. You just need a moment where you're not judging yourself. A moment where you're allowed to feel what you feel, without turning it into a reason to doubt yourself. So if today felt heavy, let it be heavy without adding more weight to it. If you lost patience, let that moment pass without turning it into a story about who you are. If you're tired, let yourself acknowledge that without guilt. You are still showing up. And that counts more than you realize. So tonight, when things finally get quiet, instead of replaying everything that went wrong, try to sit with one simple truth. You did what you could with what you had. And that is enough.